everyone else. It's really great to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Great. Got a headset on. You never know. My tech web prowess tells me that you never know, and you should always ask. Really grateful to be here. I started the program in 2008, actually in February. So this is my anniversary month. February 25th is my birthday. We were talking about when we got here that it's Betty's belly button birthday today. Happy birthday, Betty. So my OA birthday is coming up, be 13 years. I count all 13 years toward my recovery. Thank you. And to my abstinence. And one of the things I really wanted to talk about tonight is the difference, the connection, the relatedness of food plan and abstinence, and how they're not the same thing for me. And so I have about 20 minutes. Is that correct? Okay. Just want to make sure I keep an eye on the clock. I'm originally from New Orleans, grew up here. I come from an intermarried family. In New Orleans, we call that a cashew, Catholic Jew. Of course, it's a food word, totally fitting, because food was very much at the center of Jewish life and Catholic life and New Orleans life for me. And I didn't really realize that I had like any major problem per se with food. I always knew I had a superpower where food was concerned. I could tell you what I had eaten at important occasions. In fact, there are still some memories that I have that I only remember because I remember the food I was eating at the time. So just certain things like that. And then I have memories from my childhood that indicate to me that I always had this eating disorder, this disease. My dad at holidays would give me a giant package of something as a gift and would say, now don't eat it all at once. And I would say, okay. And then I would eat all but, it was like hundreds, right? In the thing, I would eat all but 3. So I was following the rules. I was doing what I said. The instruction was don't eat it all at once. And so that's what I did. And I was really good at dodging labels in this way. So when I finally made it to a psychiatrist years later to get diagnosed with the mental illness that is, the disease that we have, she said, wow, you have really been dodging labels, right? So I had studied psychology in college. I knew what anorexia was. I knew what bulimia was. I didn't have either of those, in my opinion, because I wasn't starving myself and I wasn't throwing up. But come to find out, I had restrictive behaviors. I had exercise bulimia. I had all sorts of strategies for ensuring I never got extremely overweight despite my binging behavior. I say all of that, I don't usually talk a lot about the food, but it's kind of coming up for me right now. I am 15 weeks pregnant, which is very exciting. Thank you. Been wanting that for a long time. And it's been quite an interesting experience for someone with an eating disorder, someone who has this disease, and for someone in recovery who has a good, strong connection to higher power. So I'm very lucky to have that, and to my program. And what I want to talk about is like what my food plan has looked like. So my very first food plan, I was on a diet and calories club at the time that I started program. And I remember just continuing to adopt that as my food plan. But the miracle, right, like the pink cloud of not having to binge related to that. I came into program the smallest weight I've ever been. So I knew for me, it was not really about weight, except for the fact that I was absolutely petrified to gain the weight back. My mother had been a yo-yo dieter her entire life, and I had vowed to myself that I was not going to go through that process. Come to find out years later, her up and down wasn't nearly as dramatic as she thought it was, right? And therefore, as we thought it was, because it was rhetoric and was just the way of the world, is what we believed about weight. My family's pretty fat phobic, and I've come to learn that as well. And it's been really interesting. So February 2008 came in. I weighed 30 pounds less than I do now, but I was totally scared that I was going to gain it back. I was binging on low-calorie foods in order to prevent it from happening. I had recently lost a bunch of weight on that Diet and Calories Club, made it to the rooms, had a reprieve, but was basically told, like, yeah, the reprieve is great, but it's not going to stay away unless you work the steps. And didn't have a sponsor at first, finally found one. That was an amazing experience for me to have somebody who actually cared about what I ate as much as I did. I had always sort of wanted to come home and tell my husband exactly what I had eaten. At the time, it was my boyfriend. He cared not. And so to have someone else who was open to hearing every day what I'd eaten and how I felt about all of it was really nice. Turns out she was also there for emotional support, as was my home meeting that I would go to. So continued that way. She suggested that I start reporting my food to her as part of my food plan, and that made me really nervous. We say that part of the reason for that is because we don't want to be alone with the disease, and that was definitely true. It was very hard to give up the control of that. So I did. Started reporting my food to her, found that was actually really freeing in a lot of ways. Continued doing that until we stopped working together due to other circumstances. Nothing serious, just drifted because of life. At the time, it was really hard because I had put a lot of my higher power in her and had to learn that I was going to be okay even without her. So eventually, food plan shifted somewhat. Oh yeah, working with another sponsor, I started identifying foods that I had issues with, right? And started classifying them, discovering that most of them were sugar or sugar related, and ending up deciding to take off sugar as a whole, just because, and this is, I think, more related to the idea of abstinence. The reason I came in these rooms is because I was feeling insane where food was concerned. And that was an incredible time suck and horrible way to live, honestly. It was not really a way of living at all as a young adult. And I could tell that something wasn't right in my life and that I was unhappy, but I was never quite sure exactly what. And then to come into this program and discover if I removed the guesswork and all the decision making, I actually felt better. Even though I thought I would feel restricted, I felt better. So made the decision then to let go of the sugar. And then about 6 years ago, I own a pet care company. That was my full-time job for a decade. I still own it, but I now have another job as well. But I was walking a dog who, by some happenstance, came across a cat and murdered it while I was walking the dog. So food plan changed that day. Basically, I watched this poor defenseless animal die in front of me and said, that's it. I don't want to be a part of that process anymore. So went vegetarian that day. Had the whole conversation with a therapist at the time about, is this healthy? Is this safe? Why am I doing this? And in the end, it was like, do you need to eat meat? No. Do you want to eat meat? No. Maybe it's not a big deal and you could just not. So that's sort of how that started. And then learning all the health benefits later on, it was like hard to take it back. When I finally got to the point where I felt I could eat that. So that happened. Later on, I was feeling really exhausted a lot of the time, struggling to figure out what's going on with my energy, and ended up going to some natural healers, one of whom suggested I give up dairy. So I added that in. So at this point, no sugar, no dairy, no meat. So really vegan other than eggs. And also I don't drink. I come from a family that has a history of alcoholism. So I just tried to avoid addiction by avoiding alcohol and drugs. And instead it hit me in all the other potential ways that it hits you. You can't run from it. But that's included in my food plan. And then still wasn't feeling great, feeling better, but not totally great. Went to another healer who said, you should give up grains. So not just gluten, not just wheat, like literally all grains. So did that too. I also have found that I can't really safely eat sugar-free stuff, and I don't really want it because it's really not good for you. So in the end, like my food was just getting like narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower. And I remember one particularly good speaker who said, I think about what is on my list, not what is not on my list. So she was basically like, I can eat protein. So when people ask me, what do you eat? I say, I eat fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and eggs. And, you know, it's like, there's plenty of those things. Actually, they come in a lot of varieties and you can prepare them in a ton of different ways. So I really wasn't feeling limited at all. So then got pregnant, and yet again, higher power was like, hey, you think you're in control of your food plan? I laugh. So then I've been in this experience over the last, I guess since I've known, which is about 9 weeks, of slowly adding things back in, which has been fascinating. Baby wants salmon. Okay. Baby says pizza. What? Grains, cheese, right? So all of that has been scary. And even sugar, which I told myself I would never eat again. I've gotten really clear, safe signals that that's what I'm supposed to have. So this has been a really fascinating process for me in just like doubling down on what my abstinence is. Because for me, my abstinence is directly related to my spirituality and my ability to trust my gut and those messages that I get from higher power. The thing that makes me feel closer to a higher power, not the thing that makes me feel farther apart. And so suddenly these restrictions I felt were what was making me crazy, when in fact before it had been having too many choices was making me crazy. So I just put this out there basically to say that I really believe in the power of this program to create freedom from food obsession. And whatever that may look like, that's my food plan. So the point at which I start to feel obsessed is the point at which I have taken back my will. And that is true for every other aspect of my life as well. So just to kind of lay that on top of the food, because as they say, it's about the food until it isn't. And that's true for my work. I've had to switch jobs multiple times while I've been in this program. Jobs, really careers. And much of that has had to do with like really trusting my gut, my feelings, my connection to like, why am I on this earth? Interestingly enough, my new career is in career coaching, where I spend most of my time telling people they have a right to be happy and do the thing that they're really good at and they love. And it was very interesting when I was interviewing for this job. They asked me, they said, well, you have the business experience, you're going to be working with business students. You have the business experience. You clearly know how to like run things and run with things and take initiative, but you don't have any coaching experience. And it was so funny to me, was like, yeah, except for 10 years of sponsorship, right? It's like not something that you can put on a resume. But I have the ability to, that I've learned in this program to take myself out of the equation and to really just ask the questions that people need to hear to really consider what they're here for. So it's been really cool to get paid for that. And also to be able to go home at night and say, wow, like I really gave someone the opportunity and the freedom to be who they are and to let go of anxiety, which is what I get to do for my sponsees as well. So working right now with a sponsee who's, been in program a little over a year. We've been, up to step 9. Now we're back in step 1, but that's really because this time her step 1 is her amend to herself. And so figuring out her food plan has been happening simultaneous to me having to accept that mine is shifting. And it's so cool to show up for her and say, yeah, but what makes you feel crazy? Like, what makes you feel like you're living out higher power's will for you? And what makes you feel like you're not? And how do you know, right? How do you really know? Because I guess I feel like so much of this program comes back to step 2 for me. Step 3, you have to be able to do step 3 in order to live your life in this new way. But you can't take step 3 unless you're 100% sure that you've taken step 2, that you've really found and come to believe in a power greater than yourself that can restore you to sanity. And I find that changes, that you constantly have to ask yourself that question. Why do I feel crazy? Is it because I don't believe in a higher power that can restore me to sanity? What would a higher power look like that could do that? So I love it, grateful for it. And I'll just say also that, being able to have a kid now, some of the hardest